And so now, fortunately for me, there's this whole new horizon of media that I get to explore. And that is only possible because I engaged with a particular type of story that past experiences had told me I wouldn't like. Alright, so recently I've been thinking that I should be making more of an effort to engage with things that I either think I won't like or that I already know I don't like. And I think this is important for two reasons. The first is that engaging with things that you don't like gives you an opportunity to understand them better and allows you to be explicit about the specific aspects of that thing that you don't like. It's one thing to say you don't like a movie because it was bad. It's another thing to say that you didn't like the movie because the world building was inconsistent and the rules of the world were constantly changing in order to push the plot forward, even though the changes didn't make any sense within the context of the story. Looking at you, The Last Jedi.
No, no, no,
This is like the 5th time I've talked about The Last Jedi in one of my videos. It's safe to say that I do not like this movie. It has single-handedly turned me away from the Star Wars franchise entirely. Watching Luke Skywalker brush his shoulder off was the moment that I realized, oh, they're not making these to tell good stories anymore. They're making these because it's content. They have the IP and they're just gonna make as many stories as they possibly can within this world because we're gonna pay for it. So I have to say thank you to The Last Jedi for helping me realize that. But anyway, like I was saying, the precise nature of your critique adds a lot more weight and validity to your words. And this is particularly important when you're dealing with things outside of movies, TV shows, books, and other types of consumable media. For example, being able to understand social or political ideologies that you don't like or that you don't agree with is an essential part of the process of addressing and hopefully eventually changing them. If you don't first engage with and try to understand the ideology, you will only be attacking your perception of it and not the ideology itself. The second video I made on this channel was about how I decided to get the vaccine. I'd been hesitant for reasons that weren't really being addressed by any of the vocal minorities or majorities in the media. I believe that the solution to the pandemic was rooted in behavioral changes and not necessarily rapid scientific advancement. And so I viewed taking the vaccine as a betrayal of one of my own principles. But the nature of the discourse around vaccine hesitancy had devolved into this pro-science versus anti-science framework, with people like myself being thrown into the anti-science camp. But as a science-affirming, vaccine-hesitant individual, I felt as though there really wasn't any attempt to understand my position. People had this perception of the problem that everybody who didn't take the vaccine was anti-science, and weren't necessarily willing to engage with the issue itself and understand that not everybody who was vaccine-hesitant was anti-science. And so they were attacking the perception of the problem and not the problem itself. But fortunately, I ended up getting the vaccine. I was one of the last to get it in my family, and one of the only reasons I did was because my sister, who was a doctor, did what I'm talking about here. She engaged with my viewpoint, which she again disagreed with, took the time to understand where I was coming from, actually conceded where she thought I had legitimate points, and provided direct, factual evidence that ended up debunking some of the things that I was saying. And so by engaging with something that she disliked, or in this case disagreed with, she was not only able to have a clearer understanding of my position, but she was ultimately able to guide me away from a stance that could have been potentially catastrophic, especially if you consider what the future held regarding the pandemic. And so now this is a principle that I hope to emulate because I've personally witnessed the potential benefits of it. Alright, but let's stop talking about politics and pandemics and let's get back to the fun stuff. Movies, TV shows, and media in general. So the second reason I think engaging with things that you think you won't like is important is because there have been plenty of times that I've had my mind changed about that thing that I thought I wouldn't like. So for example, I tend to prefer stories that are set in fantasy worlds over stories that are set in our reality or in our time, even if they have fantasy elements. You know, I prefer sci-fi, magic, dystopian futures, historical fiction type stories, just narratives set in worlds that look almost nothing like ours. I don't know, these types of stories just resonate more with me. Like, I would much rather watch a mediocre fantasy than an objectively good non-fiction movie. And this is just something that I've realized about myself after 20 plus years of consuming these types of stories. I mean, I only recently watched Squid Game, and while I can't say anything negative about the show, except maybe the part where they literally had the billionaires betting on the games, I don't know, that kind of felt like a jump the shark moment to me. I just felt like everything up until that point felt very grounded and real. Like there could actually be a Squid Game taking place right now in our society today, where poor, destitute, homeless people are sacrificing everything just for a chance to survive. But picturing Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg watching these games and betting on the winners was where I had to engage my suspension of disbelief. But anyway, like I was saying, while I can't say anything negative about the show, after I got done watching it, I was like, yeah, that was really good. And then I moved on. I didn't really give it a second thought. And yet, to this day, I still think about the ending shot from Hard Home, which is an episode from season 5 of, you guessed it, Game of Thrones, and I have to physically stop myself from rewatching 5 seasons of the show just so I can experience that moment again. So for me, that is the difference in impact between a great fantasy show and a great nonfiction show. And I get it, Game of Thrones is really just kind of on another level in terms of global impact, so that might not be a fair comparison. So if we take it down a notch and I was given the option between watching, I don't know, a movie like Dread or watching Squid Game, 10 times out of 10, I'm picking Dread, even though I genuinely believe that objectively Squid Game is a better told story. And so yeah, I just give these examples to demonstrate that yeah, you can create an objective masterpiece, but for whatever reason, if it's set in our reality, it just will not resonate with me. Or at least that's what I thought. Recently, one of my sisters, not the doctor, convinced me to watch a movie called Sorry to Bother You starring Lakeith Stanfield and Tessa Thompson. And originally when this movie first came out, I saw the trailer. And again, I just felt like the setting was too mundane for me. And so even though I thought it looked really good, I just knew I was never gonna watch it. But I ended up listening to my sister, and after I got done watching it, I thought to myself, yo, this was actually pretty dope. It still didn't grip me the way fantasy movies tend to, but there are a lot of elements of the more realistic setting that I actually really enjoyed. And so recently I've been watching more shows and movies that are based in our reality. And I have to say, I've been thoroughly enjoying the experience. One show in particular, The OA, my third and final sister has been telling me about for years now. But every time she brought it up, I was like, cool, but are there dragons though? What about magic? At least tell me there's some element of space exploration. No? Well then, good day. But I ended up watching it, and to my surprise, it turned out there were some pretty heavy sci-fi elements to the show. But that's beside the point, because even if there wasn't, the plot and just the overall nature of the story being told ended up resonating with me the same way that some of those other fantasy stories that I was talking about before did. And that was something that my preconceived notions had told me wasn't really possible. What up, Editor Fief here. So I just want to clarify that I'm not trying to give the impression that literally no stories that are set in our reality resonate with me. I mean, the Jason Bourne movies are some of my favorite movies of all time, and they constitute one of my favorite trilogies of all time. And yes, it is a trilogy. We do not speak about those last 2 movies. But anyway, my point is just that more often than not, it's the stories that are set in fantastical worlds that really strike a chord with me. I'd say maybe 75 to 80% of my favorite stories of all time, be it TV shows, books, movies, video games, or whatever, are in the fantasy genre. But that's not to say that nonfiction stories never resonate with me at all. It's just a lot rarer. But anyway, just wanted to clear that up because I felt like I was giving the impression that nonfiction stories literally never resonate with me, and so I just don't watch them or don't like them at all. And that really just isn't the case. But anyway, back to the video. And so now, fortunately for me, there's this whole new horizon of media that I get to explore. And that is only possible because I engaged with a particular type of story that past experiences had told me I wouldn't like. And so yeah, that is why I ultimately think that it is very important for me to deliberately try to engage with things that I may feel an aversion to. Because going back to the first reason, I may be able to understand that thing more comprehensively and argue against it with more accuracy and from a place of apperception. And who knows, if I'm as patient and empathetic as my sister, I may even be able to change someone's mind about something that is believed to be harmful. But also, as I outlined in my second reason, it's possible that I'll have my mind changed about that thing and find a new avenue to explore, experience, and enjoy. Basically, I'm just trying to view this as an extremely frustrating win-win scenario. But anyway, I think that's going to be it for this one. I actually wanted to talk about something else entirely, but I needed to outline this principle first to do it. And in order to prevent this video from becoming 1 hour long, I'm just going to end it here and save the rest for part 2. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, if you made it this far, thanks for hearing me out. I hope it made sense. And with that said, I wish you all the very best going forward. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.